It had been one of those long days that seemed to stretch endlessly, kind where the office lights felt brighter than usual and the quiet hum of computers made the whole place feel heavier. He wasn't the kind of person who liked being noticed, so staying late after everyone left suited him just fine. It gave him a bit of peace, a chance to finish his work without anyone rushing him or calling his name from across the room. The winter air outside was already cold, and through the tall office windows, he could see the city slowly dimming as evening settled. He pulled his jacket tighter around him while sorting out the last stack of papers on his desk, promising himself he'd leave in a few minutes. But he knew himself too well. He always told himself that, and still ended up staying later than planned. He liked the building at night. The echoes were softer, footsteps fewer, and even the coffee machine noises felt gentler. He packed his bag slowly, making sure everything was in order. He had always been careful like that, never wanting to make a mistake or cause trouble for anyone. He placed his badge around his neck, ready to head toward the elevator. But as he stepped into the hallway, he heard something unusual. The conference wing should have been empty by now. Meetings usually ended by late afternoon, and the last people to leave were the managers. So when he saw a faint light under one of the conference room doors and heard voices, serious ones, he hesitated. He didn't want to eavesdrop. That wasn't his nature. But the voices were sharp, tense, and impossible to ignore as he walked past. He tried to keep moving, but one line stopped him in his tracks. This decision will affect the entire company. If the numbers leak, everything falls apart. He froze. He shouldn't have heard that. His first instinct was to step back quietly and take the long way around to the exit. But his foot accidentally brushed against the wall, making a soft sound. He shut his eyes, hoping no one inside heard it. Inside the room, the voices paused. He swallowed hard. Maybe they'd assume it was just the air vent or the building settling. It made sounds sometimes. He waited a few seconds, listening to his own heartbeat echo in his ears. When he didn't hear anyone coming out, he slowly moved backward. But then another voice, calmer, deeper, spoke from inside, and he recognized it instantly. The CEO? He didn't run into him often, and when he did, he always kept his eyes down respectfully. The CEO was known for being firm but fair, someone who didn't waste words. We cannot afford a mistake. If even one person outside this room hears about it, the situation becomes 10 times harder to manage. He felt his palms sweat. His breathing grew uneven. He wasn't supposed to hear any of this. He tried again to quietly step away and head toward the elevator. He repeated to himself in his mind, asterisk, just get out. You didn't hear anything? You don't know anything? Asterisk, he took another step back. A sharp click echoed from the conference room door. He panicked for a moment. Had they finished the meeting? Was someone coming out? He ducked slightly, even though he knew that looked ridiculous. But fear wasn't logical. He just needed to get out unseen. But the door didn't open. It seemed someone inside had just adjusted the handle. The voices continued a little quieter now. He exhaled shakily and continued toward the elevator, walking as softly as possible. The moment he reached it and pressed the button, he felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The elevator took forever to arrive, as if purposely delaying him. When the doors finally opened, he stepped inside quickly and pressed the lobby button over and over until the doors closed as he went down. He leaned against the wall. The scene replayed in his head, every word he overheard. He didn't want to know any of it. He wasn't part of the management, wasn't close to anyone in power, and never wanted to be. His job was simple, and he liked it that way. But now he carried something he wasn't meant to have, a piece of knowledge that clearly wasn't public. The lobby was almost empty when he walked out. The security guard at the front desk gave him a friendly nod. "Late one today again?" The guard asked. "Yeah," he said with a small smile he didn't feel. "Just finishing a few things. Take care on your way home." "It's cold tonight," he nodded, and walked through the glass doors into the night. The cold air hit him instantly, waking up the nerves in his body. He pulled his jacket close and walked toward the bus stop, his thoughts heavy. Maybe he was overthinking. Maybe it wasn't as serious as it sounded. Companies discussed big things all the time. Maybe the CEO was just being extra cautious. That was normal for someone in his position, but still, the tone of the voices had been unsettling. They sounded worried, stressed far more than normal. He didn't want any part of it. He wanted to go home, eat something warm, and forget the entire moment. And he tried. He really did. By the time the bus arrived, he'd convinced himself to push it out of his mind. Yet later that night, as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the same thought repeated over and over. Asterisk, what if someone finds out I heard it? Asterisk, the next morning, he woke up hoping the feeling had passed. But the moment he checked his phone, his breath caught. He had an email he had never received before, not since he joined the company. Subject: meeting request, CEO's office. His hands trembled slightly. Why would the CEO want to see him? He wasn't important enough to be summoned for anything normal. He didn't handle anything related to the meeting last night. He didn't do anything wrong, except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He stared at the email again. The words didn't change. He dressed quickly, barely eating breakfast. The walk to the office felt longer than ever. Every step felt heavy. His thoughts jumped from one fear to another. Would they fire him? Ask him to sign something? Tell him to stay silent? When he entered the building, his coworkers greeted him normally. No one seemed to know anything. No one gave him strange looks. He forced himself to act normal and walk through the hallways as if nothing was wrong. But inside, his stomach twisted around mid-morning. He finally took the elevator to the top floor where the administrative offices were. He had never been up there before. It felt cleaner, brighter, and quieter than the rest of the building. He stepped out slowly, unsure where to go. The CEO's assistant noticed him immediately. "You're here for the meeting?" she asked. He nodded, trying to hide the worry in his eyes. "Please wait a moment. He'll call you in shortly." He sat on a chair near the window, looking out but not seeing anything. His thoughts were loud, drowning out everything else. What if this was it? What if he was about to be told to pack up his things? He couldn't afford to lose his job, not now. Not like this. After several long minutes, the assistant looked up. "He's ready for you." His heart thumped hard in his chest. He stood slowly, almost forgetting how to walk for a second. The assistant opened the door for him. He stepped into the office, unsure of what waited for him. The CEO sat behind his desk, calm, collected, and looking directly at him. "Come in," the CEO said. He did, and in that moment, he knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. He stepped into the office, feeling every bit as small and nervous as he imagined. The room was spacious, with large windows letting in the morning sunlight. The city looked calm from above, almost peaceful, but he could feel the tension in his own chest. He wasn't sure what he expected when he walked in. Anger, disappointment, or maybe even being told he had made a terrible mistake, but he certainly didn't expect the calm, steady presence of the CEO. The CEO looked up from his papers and motioned for him to sit. His voice was firm, yet it carried no anger, no accusation, only a quiet authority. "Have a seat," he said. He obeyed, keeping his hands folded on his lap. His eyes tried to avoid meeting the CEO's gaze directly, but curiosity and fear made it impossible to look away completely. The silence stretched, making him more aware of every small sound, the faint hum of the air conditioner, the scratch of a pen somewhere on the desk, and his own quickened breathing. "I understand you overheard a conversation last night," the CEO said finally, his tone calm. There was no anger, just a clear recognition of the situation. He nodded slowly, giving the young man a moment to process. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. I was just walking by." His voice trailed off as he felt the words weren't enough, that they couldn't convey how accidental this had been. The CEO leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "I know it was an accident. That much is clear. You were not supposed to hear that discussion, but now that you did, I need to understand something from you." His heart skipped a beat. "Understand what?" he asked cautiously. "Your perspective," the CEO said. "You work at the ground level. You see how things operate day to day. I want to know what you see, what you think works, and what doesn't." He blinked, surprised. "You want my opinion?" he asked, unsure he had heard correctly. Yes, the CEO replied. I have spent years making decisions from this desk. But sometimes I need to hear from someone who experiences things differently. Someone who sees the company in ways that can't be reported in numbers. The young man felt a mix of fear and disbelief. He had never imagined the CEO asking him for advice, let alone showing interest in his perspective. He nodded slowly, still unsure if he should speak. I think some things are not communicated well, he began cautiously. Sometimes employees don't know what is expected, and small issues build up without anyone noticing. Some processes make work slower, and people feel stressed, but they don't feel safe to speak up. The CEO listened intently, his eyes never leaving the young man. Go on, he encouraged. He took a deep breath, gaining a little courage. Sometimes managers focus too much on numbers and deadlines. They forget that people are the ones making things happen. There are good ideas being ignored because people don't want to get in trouble or feel their input isn't valued. I think if the company could listen more, things would be better for everyone. The CEO nodded thoughtfully, absorbing every word. I see, he said quietly. That is an honest assessment. Thank you for telling me. Most people would be too afraid to speak this openly. He felt a small flicker of pride but quickly pushed it down, knowing he had to remain careful. I'm just trying to help, he said softly. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I just notice things. The CEO smiled faintly. That is exactly what I want to hear. I want honesty, and I want someone who can observe and share the truth without fear. The young man nodded slowly, still cautious, but feeling slightly more at ease. The CEO's calm demeanor and attentive listening were unusual, and he realized he was not in trouble, at least not in the way he had feared. I want to ask you something else, the CEO continued. Would you be willing to work with me on improving communication and workflow in the company? To help bridge the gap between management and employees, his eyes widened. Me, really? Yes, the CEO said firmly. I have noticed that certain things are not reaching me correctly. I want someone who can observe without bias, someone I can trust to tell me what is really happening. He felt a rush of emotions: fear, excitement, disbelief. I don't know what to say, he admitted. You don't have to say much, the CEO replied. Just be willing to work honestly and openly. That is all I ask. For a moment, he couldn't speak. The idea that he, someone who had always stayed quiet, someone who had always done his job without standing out, could be asked to work directly with the CEO felt unreal. Yet at the same time, it was an opportunity he could never have imagined. I will do my best, he finally said. I promise. The CEO nodded again. That is all I need. I value honesty and perspective. I want you to see the company not just as a workplace, but as a community. Your insights will help shape how we operate from now on. He left the office feeling a strange mix of relief and nervous anticipation. Relief that he was not in trouble, and anticipation for the work he never expected to be asked to do. He walked back through the quiet hallways, thinking about the conversation, replaying every word in his mind. As he returned to his desk, he realized things would never be the same. He wasn't just an office assistant anymore. He had been entrusted with something far beyond his role. He felt both proud and anxious, knowing the responsibility that came with this unexpected trust. Over the next few days, he began observing the company more closely, noticing things he had ignored before. He took notes, recorded patterns, and quietly started identifying areas where communication could improve. He approached employees cautiously, asking questions without making anyone feel singled out. Some were wary at first, unsure why he seemed interested in their opinions. Others were relieved that someone finally seemed to care about what they thought. He realized the CEO's approach was unique. He didn't want to impose solutions. He wanted to understand the reality of the company from someone on the inside. That made him feel both important and nervous. Important because his observations mattered. Nervous because he knew that if he made mistakes, it could backfire. One afternoon, the CEO called him again to the office. This time, the conversation was longer, more detailed. They discussed specific problems he had noticed, from unclear reporting lines to workflow inefficiencies. The CEO asked for concrete examples, and he provided them carefully, thinking through every word. Throughout the conversation, the CEO remained patient, never rushing him, never dismissing his input. He asked questions that made him think deeply, questions about how things could change and what barriers might exist. By the end of the meeting, he felt exhausted but exhilarated. He had never experienced a discussion like this before. It was challenging, but in a way that made him feel he was learning, growing, contributing in ways he never thought possible. Walking back to his desk, he realized that this was just the beginning. He had a role now that went beyond routine tasks and office duties. He had the chance to influence decisions at the highest level, to make the company better for everyone. And though the responsibility was heavy, he felt ready to face it, because he had been trusted unexpectedly. With something important in hand, he intended to live up to that trust. He walked through the office with a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Things had changed since his meeting with the CEO. Every glance, every conversation felt more important, because he now knew that someone at the top was listening, truly listening to what he had to say. It was a heavy responsibility, but it also filled him with a strange sense of purpose. The first task the CEO gave him was simple in words, but difficult in practice: observe. He was to watch the day-to-day operations, notice inefficiencies, and talk to employees quietly without making anyone feel uncomfortable. The goal was not to criticize, but to understand. This meant paying attention to small details, the ones that often went unnoticed by higher-ups but made a big difference in the lives of the people working in the company. He began by walking the halls more often, casually stopping by workstations, asking questions, and listening. At first, employees were cautious. They didn't know why he was suddenly interested in their opinions. Some even whispered about him, wondering if he had been promoted or if he was spying on them. He ignored the gossip and focused on the task at hand. His approach was gentle and sincere, and slowly, people began to open up. He noticed how some departments were overworked, with employees staying late regularly. He saw how certain managers ignored suggestions from their teams, creating frustration and low morale. And he also saw bright ideas being discarded, simply because there wasn't a process to bring them to the attention of decision-makers. He wrote it all down, careful not to reveal anyone's name unnecessarily, but documenting patterns that could be improved. One day, while observing a team meeting, he noticed a junior employee hesitating to speak. The young man was trying to share a new method that could save time and resources, but the manager seemed dismissive. He realized that fear of judgment was stopping valuable ideas from being heard. This confirmed what he had felt all along. Communication was broken, not because people didn't care, but because the environment made them afraid to share. Later that afternoon, he compiled his notes and prepared to present them to the CEO. He was nervous. It was one thing to notice problems, another to voice them directly to the person at the top. But he reminded himself that honesty was what the CEO wanted, and honesty was what he would give. When he entered the CEO's office, he could see that the CEO was expecting him. The desk was cleared of papers, and the CEO was looking directly at him, a calm but attentive expression on his face. "Have you found anything noteworthy?" the CEO asked. "Yes," he said, his voice steady, though his hands trembled slightly. "There are several areas where communication could be improved. Some employees feel afraid to share ideas, and some processes make work slower than necessary. I've noticed patterns where valuable suggestions are ignored, not because they're bad, but because they aren't given the proper attention." The CEO nodded. "Go on." He explained the situations he had observed, carefully describing examples without naming anyone unnecessarily. He talked about overworked departments, ignored suggestions, and managers who were unaware of the frustrations their teams faced. He also mentioned positive things: employees who worked hard despite obstacles, moments of collaboration, and innovative ideas that deserved recognition. The CEO listened quietly, occasionally jotting notes, but mostly maintaining eye contact, showing he was fully engaged. "And what would you recommend?" he asked once he had finished. He paused, thinking carefully. I think creating channels for feedback that feel safe is important. Recognizing ideas and contributions openly can motivate employees. Small changes in workflow and communication could make a big difference. And encouraging managers to listen more and criticize less could improve morale significantly. The CEO leaned back, steepling his fingers. Interesting, he said. You are seeing things from a perspective I do not always get from reports. Most people would hesitate to speak up like this. Felt a mix of relief and pride. I'm just sharing what I see, he said quietly. I want to help. That is why I asked you, the CEO said. And I want you to continue this work. I want you to be the bridge between management and employees. I trust you to share honest observations and help me make decisions that improve the company for everyone. The words sank in. He was not only being heard, he was being trusted with shaping the company in a meaningful way. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but it was accompanied by an empowering sense of purpose. Over the next few weeks, he worked closely with the CEO, providing updates, sharing observations, and discussing possible solutions. Together, they began implementing small changes. Managers were encouraged to listen, not only to their teams, but to the subtle cues in day-to-day operations. Feedback loops were created, allowing employees to suggest improvements anonymously if they felt uncomfortable speaking openly. Small successes started appearing almost immediately. One afternoon, a department head approached him. I noticed some of the changes you suggested, the manager said cautiously. I think they're helping. People seem more engaged, and I can see some of the tension easing. He smiled faintly. That's good to hear, he replied. It's just the beginning, though. We have to keep listening and adapting. Another day, a junior employee came up to him with an idea for a new workflow that could reduce time on certain repetitive tasks. The young man looked nervous, unsure if his suggestion would be taken seriously. He encouraged him, assured him the CEO wanted to hear all ideas, and made a note to bring it up in their next discussion. The CEO, true to his word, considered the suggestion seriously. Changes were implemented gradually, each one reinforcing the culture of openness and trust that had been missing for so long. Employees began noticing that their voices mattered, their input could make a difference, and morale started improving. He found himself becoming more confident too. What had started as a frightening accident, overhearing a conversation, had turned into an opportunity to make a real impact. He was learning not only about the company, but also about leadership, communication, and the value of honesty one day. While walking back from a meeting, a colleague asked him quietly, I noticed things have been changing. How did this happen? He smiled softly, careful not to reveal too much. Sometimes it just takes someone willing to listen and speak up, he said. As the weeks turned into months, the assistant became an integral part of the CEO's approach. He was no longer just a quiet observer. He was an advisor, a bridge, and a trusted voice. Every day brought new challenges, but he faced them with growing confidence. Knowing that his insights were shaping the company for the better, the unexpected opportunity had changed everything. From someone who had been nervous and unsure of his place in the company, he had become a vital part of positive change. And while the responsibility was great, the satisfaction of seeing the results improved communication, happier employees, and a more efficient workflow made every step worthwhile. He had never imagined that a single accidental moment, overhearing a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear, could lead to this. But it had. And as he continued to work closely with the CEO, he realized that sometimes life's most important opportunities come when you least expect them. And that being brave enough to speak, honestly could open doors no one ever thought possible. The days following the changes felt different in the office. He noticed subtle shifts in the atmosphere. People were more open, more willing to share their thoughts, and even small smiles were becoming more common in the hallways. The assistant felt a sense of pride, but also a responsibility he had never experienced before. He was no longer just observing. He was participating in shaping the company's culture. It wasn't all easy. Some managers resisted the changes. They were used to traditional ways of doing things, and the idea of listening more and controlling less made them uncomfortable. He noticed some whispered criticisms, glances that tried to unsettle him, and even small obstacles in his efforts to implement improvements. He felt the tension, but reminded himself that he wasn't alone. The CEO was aware, supportive, and had encouraged him to continue. One morning, he found himself sitting in the break room, quietly taking notes while a team discussed their workflow. He observed how fear of criticism had prevented people from fully expressing their ideas, and he thought carefully about how to encourage them without disrupting the balance. It required patience, tact, and a steady approach. Later that day, he brought one of his observations to the CEO. "Some teams are still hesitant to speak up," he said. "They worry about judgment. If we can reassure them and recognize their contributions more openly, it might encourage better participation." The CEO nodded thoughtfully. "We'll do that," he said. "Your insight is valuable." Sometimes the smallest gestures, like acknowledging effort or listening attentively, make the biggest difference. Encouraged, he started to approach employees more intentionally. He made a point of praising ideas, suggesting small improvements, and asking questions that showed genuine interest. People began responding positively. They started sharing more openly, and the energy in the office shifted noticeably. The changes weren't dramatic overnight, but the slow progress built a stronger foundation. One afternoon, a junior employee approached him hesitantly. "I have an idea for streamlining some of our reporting processes," the employee said quietly. He listened attentively, asked clarifying questions, and reassured the person that their suggestion mattered. Later, he brought it to the CEO, who considered it carefully and implemented a small adjustment that had a real impact on efficiency. He noticed that as improvements were made, employees' confidence grew. People started to feel empowered, realizing that their voices mattered. Even managers who had initially resisted began to adapt, seeing positive results and gradually letting go of old habits. The assistant felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that the changes were real, tangible, and appreciated. Despite the progress, challenges continued. Some departments struggled more than others, and occasionally he faced subtle pushback from those unwilling to accept change. He learned to navigate these situations with care, finding ways to introduce ideas gradually, build trust, and avoid confrontation. It required creativity, patience, and empathy, but he grew stronger with each experience. The CEO continued to support him fully, calling him into the office periodically to discuss observations, challenges, and potential improvements. These meetings were not lectures or criticisms, but collaborative discussions. The CEO valued his input, asking detailed questions, encouraging him to think critically, and exploring solutions together. One day, during a particularly challenging discussion about a team that had been consistently struggling, he suggested a new approach. "If we can provide clearer guidance and give them a sense of ownership over small projects, they might feel more motivated," he said. The CEO considered it carefully, then nodded. "Let's try that," he said. Within weeks, the team began to show signs of improvement, confirming the effectiveness of the assistant's recommendations. As the months passed, he also observed a change within himself. He felt more confident, more capable, and more aware of the subtle dynamics that influence people and productivity. He learned how to listen not just to words, but to tone, body language, and patterns of behavior. He became a problem solver, a listener, and a facilitator, bridging gaps that had previously gone unnoticed. He also developed stronger relationships with employees across the company. People started seeking his advice, sharing ideas, and trusting that he would listen without judgment. He remained careful to maintain neutrality, never taking sides. But his ability to connect and empathize made him a trusted figure in the office. The CEO occasionally praised him publicly, highlighting how his observations had contributed to improved efficiency, morale, and communication. These moments were rare but meaningful, reinforcing the importance of honesty, courage, and commitment. One afternoon, while walking back from a meeting, a group of employees stopped him. "Thank you," one of them said. "Things feel different now. We feel heard, and it's making a big difference." He smiled humbly, feeling a warmth that went beyond professional satisfaction. "I'm glad," he said softly. "Keep sharing ideas and keep supporting each other. That's what makes the change real." The months continued with small victories and occasional setbacks. Each challenge taught him something new, from understanding different personalities to navigating office politics without losing integrity. He felt a growing sense of purpose, knowing that his work directly impacted people's daily experiences and overall satisfaction. Despite his progress, he remained humble, aware that the work was ongoing and that improvements required constant attention. He focused on being present, listening carefully, and fostering trust wherever he could. Every interaction became an opportunity to learn, guide, and encourage. Through these efforts, companies slowly transformed. The atmosphere became more positive, collaborative, and innovative. Employees felt safer expressing their thoughts, managers became more receptive, and ideas that were once ignored began to flourish. The assistant's role, initially a result of an accidental overhearing, had become central to this transformation. One day, the CEO called him again to the office. "I want you to know how much your efforts have mattered," he said. "The changes you've helped implement are improving the company in ways we didn't anticipate. You've become a vital part of this process." He felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The journey from fear and uncertainty to impact and trust had been extraordinary. He realized that being observant, honest, and committed had not only changed his own role, but also positively affected the lives of countless employees. He returned to his desk that afternoon with renewed determination. There was still work to do, challenges to overcome, and improvements to make, but he felt confident in his ability to contribute. He had learned that meaningful change was gradual, required patience, and depended on understanding, empathy, and collaboration in quiet moments. He reflected on how everything had started, an accidental overhearing of a conversation that could have caused panic, worry, or even disaster. Instead, it became the catalyst for personal growth, professional development, and a positive transformation within the company. He realized that sometimes the unexpected moments in life carry the greatest opportunities, and being willing to act with honesty and courage can lead to results far beyond what one might imagine. He walked into the office that morning feeling a mixture of anticipation and reflection. The months of observation, communication, and small changes had transformed not just the company, but himself. He had grown in confidence, understanding, and purpose. Yet even with the progress, he knew that change was ongoing. There were always areas to improve, people to listen to, and solutions to explore. That day, the CEO called him into the office once more. The assistant felt a familiar mix of nerves and curiosity as he made his way to the top floor. He had grown accustomed to these meetings. They were not about fear or discipline, but about collaboration and problem solving. Still, there was always a sense of significance in the air when he stepped into the CEO's office. The CEO greeted him with a warm smile. "I wanted to speak with you about your role and the progress we've made," he said. "I'm impressed with your insights, your dedication, and your ability to navigate challenges. You've shown a remarkable understanding of the company and its people." The assistant felt a wave of gratitude, though he tried to stay composed. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I've just been trying to help where I can." The CEO leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the desk. "It's more than that. You've become essential to our progress. Your observations, recommendations, and ability to listen and connect have made a real difference. That's why I want to offer you a new role, one with more responsibility and the opportunity to shape the company at a higher level." He blinked, surprised. "A new role?" he asked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Yes," the CEO said. "We've seen how effective your work has been, and I want you to continue this path officially. You'll be working closely with me on company strategy, employee relations, and operational improvements. Your insights will directly influence decisions and policies." The assistant felt a mix of shock, pride, and excitement. He had never imagined such a turn of events. Just months ago, he had been an ordinary office assistant, quietly completing tasks without attracting attention. Now he was being entrusted with a critical role in shaping the company's future. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I never expected this." "You don't have to say much," the CEO replied. "Just know that your work has been recognized and valued. I believe in your ability to continue making a difference." He left the office feeling a profound sense of achievement. The accidental overhearing that had caused so much fear and uncertainty had become the turning point of his career. He realized that sometimes life's unexpected moments carried the greatest opportunities. Over the next weeks, he transitioned into his new role. The responsibilities were greater, the decisions weightier, but he embraced each challenge with the same careful attention and honesty that had earned the CEO's trust. He continued observing, listening, and connecting with employees, but now with a broader perspective. He contributed to strategy meetings, proposed improvements, and helped design initiatives that would benefit both employees and the company as a whole. The employees, too, noticed the change. They saw someone from their ranks now working at a higher level, someone who understood their challenges and had their voices represented in decision-making. Trust grew, engagement improved, and a culture of transparency and collaboration became stronger. He learned quickly that leadership was not about authority or control, but about understanding, communication, and empathy. He guided managers gently, encouraging them to listen and support their teams. And he worked to create an environment where ideas could flow freely without fear. Slowly, the workplace transformed into one where people felt heard, valued, and motivated. Despite the success, he remained humble. He knew that one person alone could not change everything. His approach was always collaborative, seeking input, listening carefully, and finding solutions that balanced multiple perspectives. The CEO's trust and support gave him the confidence to navigate challenges. But he remained grounded, knowing that ongoing improvement required patience, attention, and dedication. One afternoon, as he walked through the office, a group of employees gathered around him. They expressed gratitude for the changes, for the new openness in communication, and for the recognition they were finally receiving. He listened, encouraged them to keep sharing ideas, reminded them that their contributions were vital to the company's continued growth. In quiet moments, he reflected on how far he had come. From a nervous office assistant worried about being discovered overhearing a confidential conversation, he had grown into a trusted advisor, a bridge between employees and leadership, and a key contributor to positive change. The journey had been unexpected, challenging, and sometimes intimidating, but it had also been deeply rewarding. He realized that honesty, courage, and a willingness to act with integrity had opened doors he never imagined. The opportunity had come from a moment of accidental insight, but the results were the product of careful observation, empathy, and consistent effort. He had learned that the right actions, taken at the right time, could create a ripple effect that transformed not only a company, but also his own life. The CEO occasionally acknowledged his contributions in meetings, praising his ability to navigate complex situations and provide clear, thoughtful recommendations. He was still learning, still growing, but he had gained the confidence to face challenges, guide improvements, and help others reach their potential. Months later, as he reflected on the journey, he recognized that the story of his rise was not about luck alone. It was about being observant, speaking honestly, listening carefully, and acting with integrity. It was about taking responsibility, embracing challenges, and building trust with both employees and leadership. He continued to work closely with the CEO, implementing improvements, supporting employees, and fostering a culture of openness and collaboration. The company continued to evolve, becoming more efficient, innovative, and connected. And through it all, he maintained the same careful, human-centered approach that had guided him from the beginning. Looking back, he knew that everything had changed in an instant. The accidental moment when he overheard a conversation he wasn't supposed to hear. But what followed was a story of growth, trust, courage, and dedication. He had turned an unexpected event into an opportunity to make a meaningful difference, both for himself and for the company. In the end, He realized that life's unexpected moments could carry the greatest lessons. By being honest, attentive, and willing to act responsibly, he had transformed fear into opportunity, uncertainty into growth, and observation into impact. And as he continued his work, he felt a deep sense of purpose, knowing that his role was not just about tasks or reports, but about helping people, fostering trust, and shaping a better future for everyone around him. He arrived at the office that morning with a sense of determination and reflection. The months of change and growth had brought remarkable progress, not just in the company, but in himself. He had learned lessons about responsibility, empathy, communication, and leadership that went far beyond his original role. Yet even with all the improvements, he knew that every day presented new challenges and opportunities for learning. His role had evolved into something he never expected. No longer just an observer or advisor, he now had the responsibility to initiate projects, guide teams, and support managers in creating an environment where employees could thrive. The CEO trusted him to provide honest insights, facilitate improvements, and help ensure that the company maintained a culture of openness and collaboration. That morning, he walked through the office, noticing small signs of the changes he had helped implement. Teams were more engaged, discussions more productive, and employees seemed more confident in sharing ideas. Smiles and gestures of appreciation had become more common, creating an atmosphere that was noticeably different from the tense, quiet environment he had first experienced. He paused for a moment, feeling a quiet pride, but reminded himself that his work was ongoing and that true change required consistent effort. He entered his office and began reviewing notes from the previous week. Employees had shared feedback about processes that still needed refinement, and he was determined to address these concerns. He also had ideas for new initiatives to encourage collaboration, creativity, and efficiency. The list was long, but he was eager to tackle each item thoughtfully and methodically. Later that morning, the CEO called him in for a discussion. He felt the familiar mix of anticipation and respect as he entered the room. The CEO was seated at his desk, reviewing documents, and looked up with a welcoming smile. "I've been reviewing the progress you've helped achieve," the CEO said. "Your observations, recommendations, and ability to connect with employees have transformed the way the company operates. We've seen improvements in morale, efficiency, and communication, and that is largely because of your efforts." He felt a rush of gratitude, though he remained humble. "Thank you," he said. "I'm just trying to do my part." The CEO nodded. "Your part has been significant. That's why I want to discuss the next phase. We're entering a period where innovation and adaptability are critical, and I believe your perspective is essential in guiding the company through this." He listened attentively, aware of the weight of the responsibility being entrusted to him. "I'll do my best," he said quietly. Over the following weeks, he took on new projects that required careful planning, coordination, and attention to detail. One of his first tasks was to improve cross-departmental collaboration. He observed how teams often worked in isolation, which slowed progress and created misunderstandings. By facilitating regular meetings, encouraging open dialogue, creating channels for sharing ideas, he began to bridge these gaps. Slowly, departments began to work together more smoothly, leading to faster problem-solving and stronger teamwork. He also focused on employee development. He identified individuals with potential who had previously been overlooked, providing guidance and opportunities to contribute to important projects. He encouraged managers to recognize achievements publicly, fostering a sense of appreciation and motivation. Employees who had once been hesitant to speak up now shared ideas confidently. Knowing that their contributions were valued, challenges arose, as they always do. Some employees resisted change, fearing disruption or uncertainty. He approached these situations with patience, listening carefully to concerns, and finding solutions that addressed worries without compromising progress. He learned that empathy, clear communication, and consistent support were key to overcoming resistance and building trust. One day, a team approached him with a complex issue involving workflow and efficiencies. He listened carefully, asked questions, and guided them to identify the root causes. Together, they devised a plan to streamline processes, improve coordination, and reduce stress on employees. The implementation was gradual, but the results were immediately noticeable. Tasks were completed more efficiently, and team morale improved. He also became a mentor to several employees, offering advice, support, and encouragement. He shared insights about problem-solving, communication, and navigating challenges, helping them grow in confidence and capability. These relationships deepened his understanding of the company's culture and strengthened the sense of community within the workplace. Throughout all these efforts, he maintained close collaboration with the CEO. They held regular meetings to discuss progress, challenges, and potential opportunities. The CEO valued his observations, trusted his recommendations, and encouraged him to think creatively about solutions. This partnership allowed him to influence decisions at the highest level while remaining grounded in the realities of everyday operations. He also learned the importance of balance. While he was deeply committed to his work, he understood the need to prioritize, delegate, and maintain perspective. He developed strategies to manage workload, prevent burnout, and maintain focus on what truly mattered. By modeling this approach, he influenced others to work more effectively in Stana. As months passed, the company continued to evolve positively. Employee engagement increased, processes became more efficient, and the culture of openness strengthened. Feedback loops were established, allowing continuous improvement and adaptation. The assistant's role became central to this transformation, not because of authority or status, but because of his ability to listen, observe, and act with integrity. He reflected often on how his journey had begun. The accidental overhearing of a confidential conversation could have led to fear, punishment, or regret. Instead, it became the catalyst for personal growth, professional development, and meaningful change within the company. He realized that opportunities often arise in unexpected ways, and that courage, honesty, and diligence can turn uncertainty into progress. One afternoon, as he walked through the office, an employee stopped him. "Thank you," the employee said. "Things feel different now. We feel heard, and that makes a huge difference." He smiled, feeling a warmth that went beyond professional satisfaction. "Keep sharing ideas," he said. "Your input matters, and together, we can continue to make things better." The CEO called him in later that week. "I want you to know how much your work is appreciated," he said. "You've helped transform this company, and your efforts are recognized at every level. You've become an essential part of our growth, and I am confident in your ability to continue driving positive change." He felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey from an ordinary office assistant to a trusted advisor and key influencer had been remarkable. He understood that the path to success was not about luck alone, but about observation, honesty, integrity, and the willingness to act thoughtfully and courageously. He returned to his desk, reflecting on how far he had come and the lessons he had learned. Life's unexpected moments had brought him opportunities he could never have imagined. By embracing them with honesty, care, and commitment, he had transformed fear into purpose, uncertainty into growth, and a simple accident into a career-defining journey. He continued his work with dedication, always mindful that improvement was an ongoing process. Each day brought new challenges, ideas, and opportunities to make a positive impact. He focused on listening, supporting, and guiding, knowing that meaningful change required both patience and persistence. In the quiet moments, he often thought about the beginning, how a single overheard conversation had set everything in motion. It was a reminder that life's most important opportunities sometimes come unexpectedly, and that courage, integrity, and consistent effort can turn even accidental events into transformative experiences. The assistant's journey was a testament to the power of honesty, observation, and empathy. Through dedication, thoughtful action, and a willingness to step beyond fear, he had created lasting impact. The company had grown stronger, more connected, and more adaptable. And he had grown as a professional and as a person. As he prepared for the next project, he felt ready and capable. He knew that challenges would continue to arise, But he also knew that he had the skills, support, and perspective to face them successfully. Life had given him an unexpected opportunity, and he had turned it into a journey of growth, trust, a meaningful impact that would continue to shape his future and the company for years to come.